Hello everyone. Today, I want to take you on a journey back in time into a world that is both breathtakingly beautiful and terrifyingly brutal. When we close our eyes and imagine the historical samurai of Japan, what do we see? We usually picture highly disciplined warriors in magnificent armor. We think of unparalleled swordsmanship. We imagine a profound, almost poetic appreciation for beauty, the quiet serenity of a tea ceremony, the careful composition of a haiku, and the quiet reverence for the falling cherry blossom. But today, we're going to look past the cherry blossoms. We're going to strip away the romanticized myths and confront a reality that is deeply uncomfortable. Because beneath that incredibly refined artistic exterior lay a warrior code so uncompromisingly severe, so harsh, that it demanded the ultimate, agonizing sacrifice to preserve just one single thing: honor. That code was known as Bushido, the way of the warrior. And today, we are going to explore its darkest, most visceral manifestation. We are going to talk about seppuku, the practice of ritual suicide by disembowelment, widely known in the West as Hara-kiri. Now, to the modern mind, the very concept of seppuku is almost impossible to grasp. Why on earth would anyone choose such a slow, agonizing, and intensely messy way to die? If you have to take your own life, why deliberately slice open your own abdomen? To understand this, we have to step inside the ancient Japanese understanding of the human body and the soul. You see, they believed that the hara, the belly or the abdomen, was not just an anatomical center. It was the physical residence of a person's spirit. It was where your true emotions, your deepest secrets, and your purest intentions lived. So by cutting open the abdomen, a samurai was not just killing himself, he was making a profound physical statement. He was quite literally laying his soul bare for the world to see. It was his final, undeniable proof to his lord and to his enemies that his spirit was pure, his intentions were honorable, and his courage was absolute. And let me touch on the terminology for a moment, because words matter here. The term hara-kiri translates literally to belly cutting, but the samurai themselves rarely used that term. They considered it vulgar. Instead, they used seppuku. It uses the exact same written characters, but it is read in a much more formal, refined way. Think about that paradox for a second. They wrapped an act of extreme, bloody violence in a blanket of linguistic refinement and rigid protocol. That paradox is the very essence of samurai culture. To truly comprehend why seppuku was necessary, we have to understand the crushing, suffocating weight of Bushido. The samurai lived in what sociologists call a shame culture. Many of us today live in a guilt culture, where our internal moral compass, our conscience, tells us right from wrong. But a shame culture is entirely external. It is governed by how you are perceived by your society, by your peers, and above all, by your lord. For a samurai, losing honor was not just a personal failure, it was a societal death sentence. Whether it was through defeat on the battlefield, a breach of etiquette, a failure to protect a master, or a perceived act of cowardice, disgrace was a stain that could not be washed away. A dishonored samurai became a pariah. Worse still, he brought indelible shame upon his entire family line, past, present, and future. In this suffocating reality, seppuku provided an escape route. It was terrifying, yes, but it was vital. By enduring the ultimate physical agony without flinching, a samurai could wash away the stain of disgrace. He could restore his family's honor, prove his unwavering loyalty, and die with his reputation completely intact. Let's move forward in history a bit. Seppuku actually began on the battlefields of the 12th century. Originally, it was a hasty, desperate act done in the mud and blood to avoid capture and torture by the enemy. But during the peaceful Edo period, from the 1600s to the late 1800s, it evolved. It transformed into an elaborate, chillingly calm and theatrical ritual. Imagine the scene of a formalized seppuku. A samurai has been ordered to commit the act, perhaps to atone for a failure. The event is staged with terrifying precision. First, the preparations. The samurai bathes, purifying his body. He is dressed entirely in a pure white kimono, the color of purity and the traditional color of death in Japan, symbolizing his transition to the afterlife. He is seated on a special white cushion, perhaps in a quiet temple courtyard. He is surrounded by officials, witnesses, and one very important figure standing slightly behind him, whom we will talk about in a moment. Before the violent end, there is one final act of absolute refinement. The samurai is served a final meal. He is given a brush and ink, and there, with the specter of an agonizing death looming just seconds away, he is expected to compose a jisei, a death poem. This poem must be elegant. It must reference nature and the fleeting illusion of life. But crucially, it must never directly mention his impending doom or show any fear. Then comes the blade. The samurai is presented with a tanto, a short sword, wrapped in white paper so that only the sharp tip is exposed. He opens his kimono, he takes the blade, and he plunges it into the left side of his abdomen. The traditional cut, known as the jumonji, required the samurai to slice deeply from left to right. Then, if he still had the strength, he was to turn the blade and cut upward. I want you to imagine the indescribable pain of that moment. Yet the samurai was expected to maintain a completely stoic expression. He could not cry out, he could not writhe, and he absolutely could not fall backward, as falling backward was considered an undignified posture for a warrior in death. He had to fall forward. Now, a human being cannot easily survive disembowelment, but they also don't die instantly. It can take hours to die of blood loss and shock, and this is where that figure standing behind him comes in. This was the Kaishakunin, or the second. Usually a close friend or a master swordsman, the Kaishakunin carried the heaviest psychological burden of the day. At the precise moment of maximum agony, usually just as the samurai completed the cut, or sometimes just as he reached out to touch the blade, the second would swing his katana to decapitate the samurai. But even this was bound by perfectionism. A perfect strike, a true kaishaku, was not a complete decapitation. The swordsman aimed to sever the spine, but leave a thin flap of skin at the front of the throat. Why? So that the head would fall forward into the samurai's lap, rather than rolling undignified across the floor. With that single, merciful strike, a gruesome suicide was instantly transformed into an honorable execution. It's also important to note that seppuku wasn't just used for punishment. It took several distinct forms. There was sokotsushi, used to atone for a failure, but there was also kanshi, which was suicide as an act of protest. If a lord was making a catastrophic mistake, a loyal retainer might commit seppuku, using his own agonizing death as a desperate, ultimate plea to make his master see reason. And then there was junshi, perhaps the most extreme expression of loyalty imaginable. When a feudal lord died, his most devoted retainers would often commit seppuku, simply to follow him into the afterlife, choosing to serve his master in death rather than live without him. Though the samurai class was officially abolished in the late 19th century, the psychological shadow of seppuku lingered in Japan for a very long time. The deeply ingrained ethos of choosing death over dishonor fueled the devastating tactics of the Japanese military during World War II. We saw it in the kamikaze pilots and in the tragic mass suicides of soldiers who absolutely refused to surrender. Even as recently as 1970, the world was shocked when the acclaimed Japanese author Yukio Mishima committed a highly publicized traditional seppuku. After a failed attempt to incite a military coup, Mishima disemboweled himself in a military headquarters in Tokyo, proving that the dark, hypnotic pull of Bushido had not entirely vanished from the modern psyche. To conclude, seppuku stands as one of the most stark, frightening examples of human willpower in recorded history. It is the ultimate manifestation of the Bushido code, a philosophy that demanded an impossible standard of perfection, absolute loyalty, and an utter disregard for physical survival. Today, we look back at this practice with horror and disbelief, but examining seppuku provides us with a profound insight into a culture that literally valued honor over oxygen. It is a chilling, unforgettable reminder of the darkest side of the samurai, warriors who conquered their fear of death so completely that they transformed their own destruction into a ritualized work of art. Thank you.